So after I completed your program, I met with the brand builders group, and they're like considered best in class for personal branding and coaching programs. And I ended my contract with them, and I told them very honestly that I got more done with you. They couldn't believe how much I accomplished with you,
Wow.
because they couldn't pull it out of me in a year.
Wow.
They
Wow.
couldn't pull it out of me in a year, Laura. What you pulled out of me in 3 months.
So tell me about your experience with the Soulpreneurs Prosperity Intensive.
Um, so I think it was one of the biggest times of growth and evolution for me. Um, and it was just both the time in my life, but also what we were going through in the intensive. Um, to put it in your framework, I went from overwhelmed and confused to, I want to say the word clarity. I went to clarity. And what do I mean by that? I started out not really know whom I was serving. So I felt like I wanted to serve everybody, but because of that, I was actually doing a disservice and serving nobody because I wasn't really speaking to anyone particularly. And so I gained a deep understanding of whom was I serving, which is really where my heart space was always at. I always wanted to be of service somehow. I just didn't know how or to whom or, with what content. And I gained clarity on my avatar on the who. I also gained clarity on the what. And what I loved about the what exercise is that it wasn't anybody else's ideas. It was mine. It was my experience. Um, and what was interesting about that is I never really even imagined that my experience was so rich with insights. And I still don't know how you even pulled all of that out of me. And then how you took me from being so chaotic with 150 ideas, because I am a multi-passionate entrepreneur, and to get me to whittle it down to 9 steps. I mean, I started out with 20, and then to get me. So for you, I think what you gave me, the gift that you gave me is that you narrowed me down and you put me into a framework that I could work with. So you gave me the who, you gave me clarity, but again, it was my own clarity. This is not your ideas. This was not anybody else's ideas. This is Vicki's ideas, right? This is my core essence, the truth of who I am coming through. My what, my 9 steps, and then also my how, right? And then my how obviously is through experiences, through books, through coaching that I've done, meaning like been coached by others. So a lot of that how that I had acquired through all of these different resources just kind of started gelling together and coming together. And even though maybe I was repurposing content that I had learned, I was making it my own. So it was almost like, I want to call it like a jazz piece, right? Where it's this beautiful ensemble of music and instruments that comes together, but it's your own improvisation of it. It's how you're improvising and it's how you hear it, how you see it, and you allow that to come through you, right? So that was the experience I had. And I have to tell you, I was talking to a mom. I had no idea she was single. I had no idea where she was at. All I knew was that she was a mom. And you know how I am. I'm just like chit-chatting. And I go, oh my God, I created a program to make you a badass super mom. She goes, what? And I pull it up and I show her my roadmap and I take her through the steps where I'm like, end mom guilt, end the loneliness, because right, create badass habits, stop procrastinating. And every time I would say something, she was like, "Oh my God, Vicki, that is spot on. Oh my God, it's like you're talking to me." And it was a really emotional moment. And the reason being is that two things. One is all that hard work that went into it. I know that it was not for nothing. Two, you always said, if this is coming through you, then there is a receiver on the other side who wants this, who needs this. And I found that receiver. And it was just such a beautiful moment. Not like egoic validation, but more so like, oh my God, this really can be helpful and useful to somebody, right? Like in that aspect. So I don't know if I answered your question, but that has been my experience.
Yeah, yeah. And can you see how if you wanted to create another product, you can just apply what you've learned and sit with yourself and just let it be born and do the same thing.
Well, absolutely. I'm kind of going through the same thing now for a physical product for my tea business because I'm honestly getting into like, who am I serving? Because my tea business is also about being of service to humanity, right? It's just doing it through a different tool because all of these things are just tools and permission slips, right?
Mhm.
Um, and so I'm absolutely going through the same journey right now where I'm sitting with myself and I'm thinking through and feeling into like, who am I serving? What problem am I solving for them? Right? What is it that they really want and need right now? Because it's not really so much the tea, it's the outcome of the tea. Right. So, like, what is that from to? And interestingly enough, the marketing gurus that I'm sitting down to work with, that's exactly what they want us to go through is that like persona exercise, right? Like who is that persona that we're going to talk to directly? So incredibly useful and helpful framework. And the framework is whether this is a coaching program or a learning product, like a teaching product, but also a physical product,
Mhm.
because you go through this exact same experience. You need to know your customer better than they know themselves so that you can tell them how you can help them and the outcomes that you're going to deliver for them, right? So, yes, 100%. The other thing I want to add is the program is not easy, but in a way, it is simple.
Mhm.
And, you know, the reason it's not easy is because we start out in a very squishy place with ourselves. But it is in sitting in that discomfort and working through the discomfort that gets you from point A to point B. The other thing that I also really loved is that you were making it okay for us to be completely imperfect, and our imperfection was perfect. It was like the perfect imperfect action.
Mhm.
And so many times I would show up to class 75% done, 75% of the way there. But in that 75%, even, I was able to find so many nuggets and so many truths in terms of putting together a program and making progress. And that was the way that I was making progress. It was through imperfect action and showing up and failing every single failing, quote unquote, every single time that I was making that progress. And it was monumental progress between where I started and where I ended up.
Yeah, I 100% agree with that. And can you see how I know we go into content and funnels and like the sales, but can you see how there's the principles in there? A lot of people are like, well, I don't want to do it exactly like this, but that's okay because everybody has their own business model, right? So the principles in there are like be seen by the world, figure out how to put yourself out there, nurture the relationships, right? ask for the exchange of energy and basically like lock the deal that you guys are going to work together in a sense. So can you see too how that that applies to physical and any business that you do online too? Yeah.
100%. And I'm not going to call it a mistake. I'll call it a learning experience. But when I had the two coaching clients that raised their hand and said that they wanted to be a part of my program, I don't know if we truly had that exchange. Um, and I think because of that, I didn't maybe have the commitment, because committing yourself to 6 weeks, 9 weeks, 2 hours, 15 minutes, it doesn't matter. It's a commitment, right? It's a commitment to show up. Um, and I think that those principles that you taught in parts 2 and 3, it helps you get to a place where you actually are able to physically teach the people, or to bring all of this to life and to bring into fruition. So yeah, 100%.
Yeah, there you go. Good. And then I've been asking everybody this because it was something that everybody kind of mentioned in their, the written testimonial. And it was just, I knew the importance of it, but could you highlight a little bit about your experience with the community, just having the community of everybody coming together and showing up together and working together? Can you explain a little bit about your experience and why that was important?
Yeah, I think community was a huge part of our success, and it was on several levels. I think one is just we're human and we're wired for connection. Plus, we're women, so we're really wired for lots of connection. And what was so beautiful about the community that you brought together is that we were this beautiful mix of super introverts and uber extroverts. And it was this beautiful blend of the extroverts talking enough so that the introverts started talking too. So, so all jokes aside, yes, I think the connection was incredibly important. I think it also gave you something to look forward to, right? Especially on Thursdays, the second session, which was really just learning, but very differently. We were learning from each other.
Mhm.
The first session, we were learning from you in a very structured way. And the second session, we were learning from each other in a very unstructured way, but we were still learning, still growing, still expanding, and adding to one another. So that was happening. But I think the third thing that it also did was it created accountability. And it was awesome having these women, you know, texting, like, did you do the homework? Oh my God, I don't understand. And, helping each other, but also keeping each other accountable. Like we would all check in with one another. Did you do this? How far did you get? Right. And you don't want to fail each other. Right. And you want to not only not fail the teacher, you don't want to fail your teammates even more, I think, right? So that accountability was tremendous. But then also, misery loves company. And it was kind of awesome to see that I wasn't the only one struggling as much as I was, right? And to see that we were all having this one singular human confused experience. And that again was that permission slip of like, okay, well, I'm super imperfect, but at least I'm not the only one this imperfect. Like I'm not the only one who didn't get 100% of it.
Mhm.
So I think that's what the community did, and I absolutely loved the community. And loved meeting everybody and really expanding my horizon and expanding my circle of friends and people probably that I wouldn't have been friends with otherwise, right?
Mhm.
Um, and so again, like it created this beautiful connection with beautiful people that I wouldn't have known otherwise.
Yeah, that's awesome. And when I first did like a group coaching thing, I never knew what questions to ask. And that was when I realized that um that's how I would grow is by showing up for group coaching or group sessions like that, like the joint stuff because other people were just asking questions and I was like, yeah, I want to know that. Like, yeah, I want to because I never knew what to ask, or I was too shy to ask. And then eventually I'm like, yes, I want an answer to that question. And then I just got all these answers that other people were brave enough to ask and I grew because of other people, and they're in the teacher answering and stuff. So um I think that's why questions in a group setting are always so powerful because those of us that are like lost and we're like, we don't know what we don't know. We don't know what to ask. It allows growth even without those questions. And then you learn what questions you do need answers to later on. So that's what I love about the group dynamic personally. So what is I think I only have just one other question. Um, the doing and the being, I feel like is very important. And you talked about that a lot. Like this is a good combination of doing and being. So can you explain that a little bit?
Um, yes, absolutely. I want to crack a joke, but I won't.
You can if you want to.
Yeah. Um, doing and the being. So I have to be honest, I struggle with that. And I'll tell you why, because I'm a recovering doer, right? And so much of my self-worth for like 47 years came through doing, accomplishing, achieving, right? So much of the way I saw myself and defined my self-worth was through that. So to me, if I wasn't doing, then I was lazy or I wasn't doing what I needed or I was lazy or I wasn't getting enough done, right? But the doing and the being, it is a delicate dance where, and I'll give you an example, that moment in time where I really needed to feel into the being and the doing. So at the very onset, when we had to understand our avatar, there was the doing part where I needed to write up who this woman is and what does she look like. But before I could do that, I had to feel through her. I had to feel through who she is at her core essence and how can I be of service to her, but only through understanding her deeply. And that required a lot of being, which was stillness, quiet, um, reflective. And it wasn't until I really invested the time, and I'm putting this in air quotes because for a recovering doer, this is not easy, right? Because sadly, there's an association with if you're doing nothing, then you're not really being productive. Um, but I genuinely had to sit with myself and feel into who she is. What is she struggling with? I love the question when you ask, like, where does she shop? What does she wear? What car does she drive? And I was envisioning, like, what perfume does she wear? Like, what is that essence of her? Who is she at her essence? And it was only after being that I was able to do and to really write out all the answers to the questions so that I could understand whom I was truly serving. So that's an example of the being and the doing. And there was a lot of that all throughout. When we were writing content, we again had to sit with ourselves. what would resonate with this person? What could I say so that it's like, oh, yes. And that's where a lot of that end mom guilt and loneliness, it was through that being, that the remembrance of that experience that I had as a mom, where a lot of those ideas came through me. And that's how they started making their way into the program. The other exercise of the being and the doing that we did was the flashcard exercise, where you were like, write everything that is in you. Doesn't matter, just write it out. And while that was an exercise of doing, it was also an exercise of being, because I was genuinely in that energy of channeling I all the thoughts, ideas, emotions, feelings, right? And I have like a stack of index cards that is like deep, right? Deep, deep, deep. But out of that, I was able to then pull it together and to identify my steps. But I wouldn't have been able to identify the steps unless I did all that purging of the emotions, the thoughts, the ideas within onto these cards.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why the being and the doing, it's almost like a the yin yang sign to me, right? Is the completeness of the wholeness, because you cannot you can't only be, then you'll never do anything.
Mm-hmm.
But you can't only do, because whatever you do isn't going to be relevant. So you need that wholeness.
Yeah.
That's my best way to explain it.
Yeah. Well said. I'm going to clip that for you and I'm going to send it to you so you can post it on your YouTube channel. No, I think that's beautifully said. And, we could just chat a little bit now because the doing and the being. And even today, I was like, I need an idea. I need an idea. I need an idea. And I'm just like trying to do things to come up with ideas. And I realized that I just needed to go for a walk. And in that space of being, I answered my own questions. And I'm noticing more and more that when I put myself into the space of being where I notice I get results like for a walk or for a bike ride or just quiet time by myself or out in nature or, meditating or sometimes even in like Shavasana and yoga, it's like things come to me and I'm realizing that it's those times of being that I need in order to balance out and infuse that into what I do. Because like you said, if we don't do that, what I do isn't relevant. And I feel like we often end up doing too much of, I don't want to say the wrong thing. We'll just notice eventually it's not working. And then we're just constantly being reflected back like, who are you being right now? It's like, oh, nobody, I'm just doing all the stuff I think I need to do. And I think that was a huge growth. I'm constantly reminded of it, but I definitely saw in you how you shifted into let me become this person. And I love how you said the more that you became that person, you saw the struggles that she went through and you saw the solutions that you could give her. And your program was purged out of you being in that space and then just writing down what you found. And that's beautiful because I think we all went through I watched you all go through that process of like how can we isolate something so that it's manageable and solution oriented and outcome focused and not so much that a person has to live their whole lifetime to complete the program, but it's like here's your solution. um
Mhm.
yeah, so I thought that was well said.
100%. 100%. And, you know, and again, I think that the framework that you teach is applicable to any, and you can clip this if you want, but after after I completed your program, I met with the brand builders group, and they're like considered best in class for personal branding and coaching programs. And I ended my contract with them, and I told them very honestly that I got more done with you. They couldn't believe how much I accomplished with you,
Wow.
because they couldn't pull it out of me in a year.
Wow.
They
Wow.
couldn't pull it out of me in a year, Laura. What you pulled out of me in 3 months. And I love and I'm going to finish the email that you wrote about time being a tool. I know you just wrote it, but time truly is a tool, and you could use a year and not get anything out of you. You could have 3 months that are increasing, like insanely productive. And that's where some of that courage came to me to really lean into the tea business and to say, like, hey, I could work with the best of breed and get this done in 3 months and really have a search engine optimized website and emails that are working and do the A/B testing. Or I can go on another year and be in the exact same spot I was a year ago. And time is a tool. And how do we want to use that? And then I was even thinking about it on my run. Like I went for a run and my watch will tell me how many calories did I burn in the 1 hour that I ran. And it dawned on me, I'm like, wow, in 1 hour, I can burn just as many calories as I can if I were to go on a 3 or 4 hour walk. So time truly is a tool. And it's how do you choose to use it? Because it's neutral.
Mhm.
So, anyways, like I think that what you did with us is you used it as a tool with us.
Yeah, because you guys went deep. Like I feel like you didn't have any choice but to go deep,